This is the Photography is My Passion podcast, episode 15, Selling Your Pictures. Welcome to the Photography is My Passion podcast. We're back from our summer hiatus, and from here on out, we're going to be doing a new podcast every 2 weeks. In this episode, we're going to talk about something I touched upon in previous episodes and in other videos I posted to my website, anthonymorganti.com. That is the question I most often receive from people. They want to know how to sell prints or how to sell images in general. And today we're going to overview the different ways you could sell your images. Now, I'm going to tell you off the bat that I'm probably going to come across as a sourpuss on this because it is very difficult to sell images in today's marketplace. The marketplace is saturated. It's very similar to music. Back 20, 30 years ago, before there was the internet, it was relatively, well, it was more easy to sell images. It's because people weren't inundated with them all the time. Now, if someone needs like an aesthetic fix, all they have to do is go to the internet and go to Flickr or 500px, and they could look at all the beautiful images from all over the world. Back in the day, it was harder to do that, and they would be more apt to buy an image to hang on their wall. Now, it's not so much. Usually what's hung on wall are paintings or family pictures. So it's very difficult to sell images in today's market. So keep that in mind and don't get discouraged when you try to sell images, and especially at first you're not selling any, because it is hard. It's very difficult to do. So keep that in mind and don't expect to make a living from just selling images. It's really hard. And I would say it's almost impossible nowadays to make your living by just selling images. So this would be something that's going to supplement your income. Now, another thing that I've taken heat for in the past is because I'm not a big fan of Flickr, 500px, Instagram. Now, I am on all of those. I'm in all different sites with my images up there. And I'm there for two reasons. First of all, I teach photography. And I think it would be disingenuous of me to be teaching photography if I don't have my work online for you to see that at least I kind of know what I'm talking about. The other thing is it helps me get new people to look at my videos. They find me on Flickr, they find me on Instagram, and then they eventually venture their way to anthonymorganti.com and they might watch a video or two. So that's why I'm on those sites. Now, for you to be on those sites, it does give you some exposure and it's going to give you positive feedback. You're rarely going to get constructive criticism from these sites on your pictures. You're just going to get praise. So you have to really temper that praise to realize that maybe you're not as good as you think you are, or maybe you have some room for growth. Just remember that. My recommendations is if you're looking for constructive criticism on your work and you really can't hire someone to review your portfolio critically, then I would join a Facebook group. And in Facebook groups, there are many around that allow you to ask for constructive criticism. They usually call it CC. And you're going to ask for CC when you post your image. And for better or for worse, you're going to have other Facebook users give you their opinion on your technique and your photographic style and on your image. So that's the route I would go if you're looking for real constructive criticism on your images. Now back to selling your images. Some of these sites, like 500px is one, they have a marketplace and you could upload your images there and everyone gets to look at them and they afford the opportunity to maybe make a sale or two. This is where I'm more of a sourpuss on this. You have to remember that these sites, Flickr, 500px, all of them, they're really photographers going there. And it's photographers looking at other photographers' work. And you're not apt to sell your work to another photographer. Think about it, you're a photographer. Are you going to buy someone else's picture to hang on your wall? it probably isn't going to happen. So I say it's very difficult for you to sell your images on sites like 500px or Fine Art America and things like that. It's very hard to do. So keep that in mind, that that probably isn't the way to go. If you want to sell your images, there's two ways you could go. And it really depends on what your personality is like and how much time you have to actually devote to selling images. If you don't have a lot of time, if you can't really get out and market yourself, physically get out and market yourself, then I would suggest that you go to a website like SmugMug. There's a lot like SmugMug out there, but SmugMug is one that I'm familiar with. And you could go to SmugMug, you could pay whatever it is, for a year, and you upload your images to SmugMug. People, now this is where you have to do some marketing yourself to market your SmugMug website, get people to go there. They would go there and look at the images, and they could purchase them right from SmugMug. And SmugMug handles all the shopping cart software and the handling of the money and the sales tax and all that other stuff. That all gets taken care of by SmugMug. So people would go on, buy the image that gets all handled by them. When you sign up with them, you tell them what lab you want to use. And here in the United States, there's a number of different labs you could choose from that work directly with SmugMug. So you would pick a lab, and what happens is it's seamless. Someone would buy an image, SmugMug takes the money, they send the JPEG to the lab prints it and mails it directly to the customer. SmugMug takes a small cut of their percentage or whatever their part of the money. They pay the lab, and then you get what's left. That is the way I recommend to go if you don't have a lot of time to actually get out and physically market yourself. Now, you will have to do some online marketing here, and what I would suggest you do is that you market yourself. Don't market a company. Don't market like J&M Photography or Creative Edge Photography or anything like that. Market your name. You want to try to elevate your name as far as a photographer is concerned, because in the long run this will benefit you. Hopefully someday you could reach status where you're actually selling signed limited edition prints. And if you're doing it as Creative Edge Photography, it's more difficult, or a name like Creative Edge Photography. But if you're doing it as your own name, that's what you're marketing, your brand, and your brand is your name. So see if you could even get a website that is your name. So it'd be anthonymorgantiphotography.com or something like that. So you want your name involved. That will help your marketing in the long run. And get, however you could do it, through Facebook, Twitter, try to promote the site. It's still going to be very difficult to sell your images. I'd be very satisfied if I did that and I got a sale a month. Really, it's very hard to do. But if that's the way you want to try, or if you want to try selling images, that is your own images, that is one way you could do it. You really have to market yourself. I also recommend that you don't have a website with 1,000 different images of 1,000 different subjects. It's usually better if you specialize a little bit. What I mean by that is you don't want like landscape images with street photography images all mixed in with wildlife images. You want to be more specific. So if you're a wildlife photographer, you just want wildlife images on that site, and you want them to be easily searched, meaning you probably want separate folders. You want birds in a folder, raptors in a folder, you want mammals, reptiles, all different folders, so people could more easily find what they're looking for. People usually know what they want before they go to the website. They're looking for a picture of a leopard. They like leopards. But if they have to wade through all these pictures of sunsets and waterfalls and Yosemite National Park and the Grand Canyon, they're going to lose interest and leave until they could really find a site that will give it to them a little quicker. So try to narrow the focus of your site as much as possible. And then even beyond that, make sure things are set up in folders so that they're easily searched, so people don't have to search through a lot of things. And again, I'm sorry, I'm a sourpuss on this, but it's going to be very, very difficult to still sell images this way. But a lot of people ask me about it, and that's the way I would go. Now, I have no affiliation with SmugMug whatsoever, all right? So just came to mind, that's one that came to mind. There's a lot of sites like SmugMug. I would research them all for your own benefit and see which makes more sense for you, which is in your price bracket or offer the things you're looking for. The other way you could do it, and the way I more recommend you try to do it, is actually get out and market yourself physically. So you have this great set of images and you want to sell them. Preferably, you would like to have your own photo printer so you could print them yourselves. This, of course, will keep costs down, and you could actually print right away. You don't have to wait for a lab to print them and wait, if they're out of town especially, wait for them to be delivered. Then what I would do is I would go out and have a portfolio of your work and go to businesses first. Hospitals, hotels, restaurants. Just drive down a street with a lot of commercial businesses and see which ones do you think would benefit from having your work on the wall. Law offices. Just go through, just say I'm selling prints, I'm a photographer in the area, and what will sell better for these types of sales are prints of the area. So make sure you exploit your area. In Buffalo, we're right, just down the street from Niagara Falls. So if I were to do this, I would make sure that I photograph Niagara Falls from every angle, in every season, in every weather condition, every time of day possible. So I really saturated Niagara Falls with images, and I would have a lot of choices for my customers, my prospective customers, to make. I'm sure there's similar places that you could exploit in your neck of the woods. It could be, a seaside resort. It could be something nearby that a lot of people are interested in, and maybe they sell postcards for. That's what you want to do. So try to get as many shots of your local area, architecture in your area, neighborhoods in your area, things like that. Then bring these images to these different businesses and see if you could sell them. Another route is coffee shops. Now, coffee shops is a little different. It's hard to make sales right out of a coffee shop, although it is possible. Most people are in and out, and people that sit there generally aren't looking at the wall. And one of the mistakes I see that people make when they put their work in a coffee shop is they don't have it labeled very well about who they are. So make sure that if you do go to a coffee shop and they agree to put your work on the wall, that you have it easily seen that you are the photographer, how they could get a hold of you, how they could buy more work. A lot of coffee shops too, you work on a consignment basis. You'll hang your work up, everything will have a price on it, and people want to buy something right off the wall. They could do that, and they pay the coffee shop for it, they walk out with their print. When you come in, you look and see what was sold, and the coffee shop owes you a percentage of what was sold. You, of course, have to make sure you cover your cost of the print and the framing and the matting and all that stuff. So you make some money that way. Sales aren't as great as a lot of people would lead you to believe. I think part of the reason why is it's not really obvious that the prints are for sale. So when you do hang them on the coffee shop, make sure you let the coffee shop know that you're hanging something to say that the prints are for sale. You have the price of the prints very prominently displayed, so people will know that they're for sale. Also, see if you could put something on the counter, maybe a brochure, even a business card, anything there that will, when people are paying for their coffee or paying for their muffin, whatever, they're standing there for a moment and they could see it, and they could see that it says something, that the work is on the wall. This coffee shop is displaying the work of, and have your name there. And they might take notice and make some sales, maybe, at least give you some exposure. So make sure you go to all the different coffee shops and see if you could do. Now, some coffee shops actually they do like a rotating show, almost like a museum show, or you have an artwork show, meaning they'll have an actual opening on this night. Photographer so-and-so has his images of whatever, and they're going to be here for 3 months, and they'll have an actual opening, and you'll be there for the opening, and people will come, hopefully, and look at your work and go from there. So coffee shops are a real good opportunity for you to exploit and expand your brand. So look into those. That will help a lot. Now again, this takes a lot of time, so get out there and go to these sites. You physically have to go to these sites, and you have to have the personality where you're outgoing enough and friendly enough and could converse with people comfortably. A lot of people aren't. I mean, a lot of people would rather be behind the computer and sell them through SmugMug, and I totally understand that. So go whichever way is you're more comfortable with. The whole idea, though, that you got to keep in mind is you're really trying to build your brand. You want to get to the point, hopefully someday, where you're a respected photographer. And people are going to look to buy prints from you because you're the photographer. They might even want you to sign a print. Then you have the opportunity to sell signed, limited edition prints. You have this beautiful image of, let's say, the Grand Canyon, and you're going to have 50 prints or 100 prints, and they're going to be numbered and signed by you, and you could sell them for at least 3 figures if you're prominent enough. So that's the point. You just can't wake up one night and say, or wake up one morning and say that I'm going to be a prominent photographer and here are limited edition prints. You want to build to that, and you really have to put a lot of work into it. Now, one thing I didn't talk about, and I will talk about briefly, is stock photography. That's another avenue if you don't have a lot of time and you really can't get out to these places and market yourself. Stock photography, I'm the biggest sourpuss in the world on, because I was in the world of stock photography in the 80s and 90s when you actually made money at it. And I think I mentioned before, I was with a place, Freelance Photographers Guild in New York City. They changed their name to FPG International, and it was a working relationship. Back then we shot slide film. We used to use Kodachrome 25. I would take pictures in Niagara Falls, like I mentioned, and all over the area, different things. I would send 100 of these slides in at a time to Freelance Photographers Guild. They would review them, keep what they wanted, send back what they didn't want. Sometimes they would leave me notes and asking me to reshoot certain things. Sometimes they would call me and ask me, they have a client that needs a specific image, can I get it because I'm in the area? So it was really a business relationship that was more personable or more personal. And they actually talked to me. I knew the people that, I know their name, they knew my name. And I think they would sell the images, and they would keep 50% of the sale, and I would get the other half. And I think my smallest check I ever received from them was $67.50, and most of the checks were in the hundreds. So that's why today it's nothing like that. I mean, everything's saturated. Everyone has pictures. Now everything's called it's on micro sites like, Shutterstock and Dreamtime and things like that. And if you make a sale from one of those sites, you're going to get probably $1, maybe less, maybe a little more, but not a lot. And that's a lot different than the least I ever got was $67.50. So what the idea here is that you have to be uploading a lot of images, and you want to use multiple sites. So the people that really make money at this, and there are some, I guess, that make six-figure salaries in stock photo, they have 10,000, 20,000 images out there on various sites. They're making consistent sales every month. So that's what you want to do. That's what you want to strive to do, I should say. So hopefully you have a lot of images already. You could approach these sites, go to them and see what their requirements are to upload images, and they usually want a sampling, of 10 images or something like that, and they'll go through them. Once you do that and you get in the groove and you're regularly uploading images, you'll start to see sales increase as you increase the number of images you have at each of the different sites. It's something that a lot of people could do very readily because, it's just spare time. They don't have to get out and market themselves. They could just do it that way. You're going to be more anonymous doing this. You're not really promoting your brand as a photographer. It's just your image is going to be one of the millions up there. Hopefully you could get some sales. What I would recommend you do too is when you go to these sites, most of them will have a needs list, what they're looking for. And look at that list, and maybe you have something already that will satisfy one of those needs, and then you could upload that. If not, try to shoot images that will satisfy those needs. You'll get more sales that way. Now, I said, I think in a previous video, they really don't want sunsets and flowers. And somebody said, I sold sunsets. Well, I'm not saying you can't sell them. So you could be a sunset photographer. I know actually a photographer, all he does is sunsets. That's pretty much all he does is sunsets. And he loves it. That's what he likes to do. That's what you like to do, by all means. I don't want you to do something you don't like to do. And you will make some sales. I'm saying you'll make more consistent sales and you'll make more sales if you do what they want. And they generally don't need any more sunset images. They don't need any more flower images. They don't need any more kitty cat images and things like that. They need specific things. Usually, from when I read the list, it's usually like business-oriented images, medical images, and the people that do stock photography full-time and make those six-figure salaries usually have a studio and they'll set up those images. They'll have people dressed as doctors, maybe looking at computers. They have businessmen and women in suits and they're shaking hands or they're doing business-oriented things with whiteboards and whatnot. And that's how they actually create the images and upload them. So there's a lot of competition here and a lot of very professional photographers doing it. So keep that in mind. It's very difficult to really make a good living at stock photography. Although it is doable, it depends how much you want to be committed to it. So that's kind of my overview of how to sell images. I still prefer, if you really want to do it and you want to elevate your brand and elevate yourself as a photographer, your best bet is to get out and go to these places yourself and have your work with you and try to sell it that way. Also, if there's an artisan or artesian market, they call them, artisan market somewhere where it's like a flea market for artists, and there's one in Buffalo. I think it's every Saturday down at Canal Side. Get a booth there and have your images there. You could sell images that way too. So just get out, get yourself out, try to sell images like I mentioned, to these businesses. I think that's your best bet to elevate your brand and to sell images along the way. Again, it's hard. It's really, really hard. But I'm sure if you're really dedicated at working at it, you'll be able to do it, especially if your work is good. So that's it. I hope that answered the bazillion questions I get on this subject all the time. And maybe in a future episode of this podcast, I'll drill down a little deeper. Maybe we'll talk about stock photography more specifically, or we'll talk about coffee shops and things like that a little more specifically. And we'll go from there. One thing I do want to talk about just real quick, I didn't mention before, is a lot of people do ask me too about getting a show, like a museum show where they show your images. That's actually not as hard as you might think it is usually. It's still hard, but not quite as hard. If you do your photography with a photojournalistic slant, meaning take images in your neighborhood. Maybe there's old neighborhood in your city that is being gentrified, and you could capture the story with photography. Maybe there's a heroin epidemic in your city, and you could capture the story with your pictures. Maybe there is a prostitution problem in a certain neighborhood. Whatever. You could do this photojournalistic story. This will really help you get a show in some type of museum, or maybe even one of those coffee houses we talked about. So that's another way you could go, and it will really elevate your brand that way. That will be probably the most apt way you could elevate yourself as a photography, is to get a type of show like that. But to get the show, it's going to have to be more of a photojournalistic type journey that you're bringing people on when they go to the show. So I just wanted to mention that real quick because I know I'll get asked about it. So that's it for this episode of the Photography is My Passion podcast. Again, I think we'll drill down and talk about something more specifically in future episodes. Let me know in the comments what you'd like me to talk about, and we'll go from there. That's it. I'll talk to you guys soon.